So the first principle of mental mastery here that I outline, that I teach, is what's your expectations. And this is probably the simplest adjustment a trader can make to their mindset right now to see the biggest return on investment. And what I mean by what's your expectations is this. Every single one of us has been on the weekend or prior to any sort of position in our head creating the fantasy and creating the story about how good this position is going to be, or how good this week's going to be, or how much money I'm going to make from this particular position or stock or crypto or currency for the day, for the week, for the year, how many Lambos I'm going to have, right? That type of fantasy portrayal that we create in our head. That's an expectation. That's a subconscious back of the mind expectation that we impose onto the market. And what you have to understand is that if you associate a lot of pleasure with that expectation, then anything but that expectation or the opposite of that expectation has a lot of pain associated with it. What you're doing in your brain is you're splitting pleasure and pain. You're associating a lot of pleasure with your expectation, which means by law of contrast, if you don't get that, what happens is you fear losing that, or you fear not getting that. You fear its opposite. There's a lot of pain associated with that. So from a practical standpoint, if you're a trader and you're associating a lot of pleasure with a certain stock or a certain crypto or a certain currency pair going in a certain direction, and you're making a decision based on that pleasure you're seeking, the outcome you're seeking, that's amateur-based thinking, then a couple things are going to happen. One, you're going to initially create stress in your mind because you fear its opposite. And every time the position goes slightly against you, you're going to have that fear. You're going to have a lot of stress, you're going to have a lot of anxiety, you're going to have a lot of pressure, and you're going to have a lot of emotions in the market. Worse yet, the position goes with you and you're elated and you get puffed up into a state of pride, which is ultimately always humbled by the market, which we're going to talk about soon. So whenever we impose our own expectation onto the market, we become susceptible to going into emotional swings, either extreme pleasurable elation, pride swings when we're right, or extreme depression and anxiety and stress when we're wrong. A lot of fear when we're wrong. So setting expectations on the market makes us extremely emotional. The second thing it does here is whenever we set an expectation, we then have confirmation bias and disconfirmation bias kicking in our brain. I assure you, every single one of you, no matter how long you've been trading for, because I know I've done this plenty of times throughout my journey, the moment we set a position and we set a strong expectation that has to go a certain direction, we then go on to different cryptos, we go on to different stocks, we go on to different currency pairs to find confirming evidence to why we're right and to support our particular bias. Or we put certain indicators that we never used before to find confirming evidence to why we're right. And then we have disconfirmation bias to block out any information, any cues, any risks that are showing we're wrong. So whenever we set strong expectations, we have confirmation bias to support why we're right. We have disconfirmation bias to disconfirm why we're wrong. And we pretty much bias and polarize ourselves into an extreme, we're right. Because you only allow information that supports your priorities and expectations in that particular moment. That's just how your brain works from a survival instinct. So not only do you create extreme emotion and stress when you set expectations, but you also block yourself out from very important information the market's trying to communicate to you. Remember, the market's always trying to communicate information to you, price over time. And whenever we set rigid expectations on the market, like an amateur does, we block ourselves off from at least half that information. We block ourselves off from certain cues and certain risks and certain information that's very useful to make decisions, to make informed decisions. Because the person who has the most information in the game is the one who wins. And if you're setting rigid expectations of which way this particular pair or stock or crypto or currency has to go, then we're blocking ourselves off from that very, very valuable information. So, the very practical application here is to develop the self-awareness before you take a particular position about the expectations you're imposing on that position. That's it. I teach more advanced principles and techniques for my one-on-one guys and stuff I cover in my course as well. But the most basic thing you can do right now is develop the self-awareness of what are your expectations on the market at that particular point when you set the entry. If you're placing the entry with the expectation that this has to go up, this has to go in your favor, I would be developing the self-awareness to stop yourself and ask yourself, do I really have control over what the market's going to do? Truly? And the answer is 99.999% of the time is no. The only thing we have control over are our perceptions, our decisions, and our actions. We have no control over what the market's going to do. Because the market is a representation of mass psychology, and we have no control over mass psychology. Or very, very little, if any. So I would be stopping myself when I'm imposing expectations on the market and asking myself, do I really have any control over what direction this position is going to go? And the answer, 99.9999999% of the time for 99.9% of you guys out there will be no. I have absolutely no control of what the market's going to do. So then I would follow up that question with, so is me imposing an expectation on the market realistic or unrealistic? And it's going to be unrealistic. And then I would ask myself, what is it I have control over here in this particular situation? Well, I know I only have control over my perceptions, my decisions, and actions. So does this particular trade meet my processes and meet my trading plan and meet my entry criteria, my rules that I've tested? I know I have an edge with that. If the answer is yes, I'm going to be executing on that position. That's a process-based decision. If the answer is no, I'm not going to be executing on that position, because if I did, it would be an outcome-based decision based on emotion and irrationality. So this is the type of thinking that I'm trying to impart on you guys. But the thing I want to underscore in this particular video is that a lot of it comes from the expectations you impose on the market in particular. So what's your expectations? That's principle one. Be aware and develop that self-awareness of what are the expectations you're imposing on the market, and catch yourself. Do I have any control over which way the market's going to go? Very, very little. What do I have control over? Executing according to the processes I know have an edge. It's as simple as that. Trading is very, very simple, but it's not easy. The reason it's not easy is because we overcomplicate it with our emotional BS a lot of the time. So implementing very simple principles like principle 1 through to 4 and the things I share with you guys on this particular series will help you make trading simple, the way it is. So I hope this was insightful and you learnt one or two new things from this. And really start to develop that self-awareness. Put those two questions in your trading plan. What are my expectations right before you place a position? And then follow that up with, do I have control over what the market's going to do next? No, absolutely not. What do I have control over? Executing according to my edge. And that's the mental model that I encourage you guys to develop in terms of your expectations.